July.
All right, welcome back, everyone. This is the last order of business for the day before we head up to the floor. And we have invited in Doug Farnham, Chief Recovery Officer, to talk about budget request that our friends in Ways and Means made us aware of. All right, if you could, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome. Have you been in here yet?
Not in the new room. I did have someone show me how to get here.
Now you know.
Right.
Now you know. Yes. Well, welcome to our new digs and our humble abode. So since it's the first time, we'll do a quick round robin. I know you know most of us, but Representative Matt Byron, I'm chair of the committee, represent Northwest Tennessee County.
Representative Lisa Hango, Franklin 5 on the northwest border with Canada, vice chair.
Representative Lucy Boyden, Lamoille 3, Cambridge and Waterville, clerk of the.
Representative Sandy Pincinel from Bennington, Rutland 1, Dorset, Danby, Mount Tabor, Peru, and Landgrove.
Michael Morgan, Grand Isle, Chittenden District, all of Franklin County and Westmont. They're Grand Isle County, geez. Sorry. Thinking about it.
Representative Coffey. Windsor District 2, Cavendish, Weathersfield, Baltimore.
Mary Catherine Stone, Burlington.
Jay Hooper, Brookfield, Braintree, Randolph, Granville, and Roxbury.
Kate Nugent, South Burlington.
Hello, I'm Shane Waters Evans. I'm from Charlotte and Heinsberg.
Welcome, sir. So our understanding is, yeah. Well, I won't steal your thunder. I'll let you proceed. Yeah.
So for the record, I'm Douglas Farnham. I'm the Chief Recovery Officer for the state. Mr. Chair, is it okay if I give a quick background of my position, why I was created, et cetera?
Please.
Well, why the position was created, not me.
I'd like to do that too.
You have been a jack of many trades in and around this place, sir. But yeah.
So after the floods in July of 2023, the governor appointed me Chief Recovery Officer. It's a temporary appointment, so it's not a statutory position. You'll not find it in the Green Book anywhere. But it's basically using an open exempt position to appoint me to a specific role for a short period of time. Prior to that, I was the Deputy Secretary of Administration in the Agency of Administration, primarily overseeing federal funds and the grants and contracting process. And before that, I worked at the tax department for just under a decade. So I have a background in kind of the administrative and compliance side of state government. And in August of 2023, of course, I was appointed to this role as Chief Recovery Officer, which was still responsible for the federal funds from the pandemic. So the American Rescue Plan Act, state fiscal recovery, the coronavirus relief funds, which we are still in the audit period for and still dealing with Treasury on, the emergency relief assistance funds, which was just over 300 million of rental assistance funds that were distributed through the Agency of Administration and then through a number of partners and programs. And of course, the FEMA grants through the Department of Public Safety, and any other recovery grants that we can get our hands on basically to work on recovery. And some of those include grants from the Economic Development Authority. We're trying to get temporary staff to help with regional conversations. The Community Development Block Grant Disaster Relief Funds that were just part of the disaster supplemental in December. So I'll be working with ACCD and Agency of Commerce and Community Development and the Department of Public Safety, among other departments, on deploying those and developing that action plan for deploying that. So my position kind of acts as a central or a high-level coordinator, kind of keeping eyes on things for the governor, trying to make sure we're moving the needle in all things flood and pandemic recovery. Of course, the floods of 2024 added to that portfolio slightly and extended the necessary work. And I think the other important thing to mention is that I keep an eye on not just the intergovernmental side of things and the finance, but business recovery and the individual recovery as well. So we stood up a bridge case manager team in the Agency of Administration using reallocated volunteer staff from around state government to provide case management services to the flood survivors. And we're also coordinating with the Agency of Human Services. We actually just this week were awarded a disaster case management grant. So trying to piece together the individual side of things, the municipal side of things, the business side of things in this recovery, and making it all at least try to make sense. It's government work, so it doesn't always make sense, but we can at least try to line things up as best we can. So this particular language, Mr. Chair, is attempting to balance the needs of the individual with the needs of the municipalities. And in Vermont, we have a system where, the majority of a property tax bill, actually 2/3 to 3/4 of a property tax bill usually comes from the education property tax side. And then so much of the taxing capacity of property taxes is dedicated to that state education property tax fund. Then the municipalities can set a municipal grand list, which on average is a little bit over 50 cents on the dollar, and whereas the education property taxes is on average a little over 3 times that. So for context, municipalities have a very limited pool to draw their resources from. Their ability to raise funds aside from property taxes are very, very limited, and usually are like dog licenses, permitting fees, very, very discrete and limited sources. So they're not allowed to raise, in Vermont, they're not really allowed to raise much for broad-based revenues. So in a flooded community, when you have 20 to 30 households applying for buyouts, it can represent a very significant impact to the grand list and the financial viability of that town in the long run, but also in the short run. The long run should be addressed through planning and that community authorizing additional development and replacing that housing. But that can take decades in Vermont, unfortunately. But if things go well, it should take about 5 to 10 years. If a community is proactive, starts the permitting, starts working on new development regions, you can replace that grand list value in roughly 5 to 10 years. So this proposal is to take excess revenues from the payment in lieu of taxes special fund, which is created by revenues from the local option tax, which is a municipal revenue source. One of the sources the General Assembly has allowed municipalities, and use those excess revenues that are generated in those economic centers of Vermont to help reimburse municipalities who have lost grand list value due to a buyout. So in this case, if a buyout is approved by a municipality, say for a 2023 property that was flooded, once it's approved and conserved, the municipality has to maintain that as green space in perpetuity. So they're no longer getting any property taxes from that. It's municipally owned, so the state isn't paying them anything for it, unlike state lands or property. And so this proposal says, give the municipality from this pilot special fund, so not general fund, so it won't impact the rest of state budgeting really, the full municipal value that they would have received from that private owner for 5 years. So it's a hold harmless for 5 years, and then another 5 years at 50% value. To encourage them to move quickly, but give them a bit more time as well to finish up those projects and replace that grand list value.
Just for
Yes, Mr.
clarification,
Chair.
right there, just on the hard, just taking those right now. So that whole piece right there, it would, for the property owner who no longer has the ability to have a structure on those areas, property tax value would be paid to the municipality 5 years in whole, 5 years at 50%.
Yes, and while the owner, there's also another element that Ways and Means that's moving related to this, is that before that buyout goes through and before the property officially comes off of the grand list, there are going to be years where that property owner is kind of in limbo, and they're waiting for all the paperwork, all the federal reviews, all the inspections, all the engineering reports. And in that time, the municipality can abate the property taxes. But if they do that, our current structure leaves them responsible for reimbursing the education fund for any abated education property taxes. So there was a bill last year that allowed for reimbursement of abatements for the 2023 floods. There's an amendment being proposed, I believe, in the BAA to extend that to allow for abatements from floods from 2024 as well. So that's how municipalities would be covered, at least for not owing the education fund during that time period of the owner going through the process. It doesn't make them whole for the municipal taxes in that time period. That was a very complicated timing issue that we didn't want to try to address with this language, but I think it is still a gap, but our hope is that it's only 1 or 2 seasons and they don't have to it's a problem that they can get past, hopefully.
Representative Pisno.
So this, this just happened in Dorset. The town actually took over a restaurant because it had been flooded out for the last 3 or 4 Sandy, Irene, 2023, 2024.
Right.
So through the act of FEMA, they did a buyout, tore the restaurant down. It's a historic it's sad. Now it's just a field. So if this was to pass, what we're saying is the town could get that money that would have been paid for by property taxes for the next 5 years. Is this gonna be grandfathered, or is this starting fresh going 2026 going forward, if this was to pass? I mean, with something like this, cause it just it took 3 years to get through the buyouts, to get FEMA, and then we had to go through all the regulations of tearing the building down and meeting all the setbacks and waterways. Okay.
They were flooded in the most recent round as well.
Yes, they were.
So the way it's written right now, any properties that go through a buyout right now, and we haven't had any finalized yet. So we've been working hard, we're getting closer, but none of the property buyouts have closed at this point. So like none of the landowners have gotten their money. So if they got their money and the land was already restored to a greenfield, it likely happened in a prior round. I personally think that this is a structure that Vermont should consider just being part of our structure long-term. But the 2023 floods and the 2024 floods were so historic. This is a one-time measure to get us through that burst in activity. And it isn't written to be a permanent aspect of the property tax reimbursement structure right now.
Because we just did do the abatement and the town had to suck up the education tax, yeah. Okay.
If you sent me the details, I could look at that case and more specifically see if it might apply. It would really depend on the timing. If it happened in this grand list year, then I believe it could be on the certification list potentially.
Do your folks in your office have like a breakdown of this on like a 1-page or 2-pager of sort of the moving parts of this process?
I don't know if we produced a 1-page write-up on it.
Or just like whatever you have to share with us, just so the community can like put eyes on it.
We have nothing to post on our webpage.
Or digest for ourselves beyond this conversation.
Beyond the language. Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, or just like the language itself, like a reference to the proposal.
Yeah, because we don't have that even on our website right now. It's E142.2, right?
Yes, I can pull that out and try to get something over to Autumn tomorrow. Would that be?
That would be great. Just like it's like just something very rudimentary for us to start to wrap our heads around a little bit, and to see if we generate any further question for you folks.
Absolutely.
Like I completely understand what you're saying with this, and I completely get the intention and the merit that this would have. So
the other aspect is it does have a $1 million appropriation because we needed to put a number to it for that special fund. It would all depend on when the buyouts actually close. And I do not believe that it would come close to reaching that 1 million in the first year. So that $1 million amount would likely last us several years. What we're really looking to do is trying to create a little bit of short-term and medium-term certainty for the municipalities that if they sign off on this, they can build this into their financial planning for the next couple of years. And, but I do not think it won't be a significant amount of money statewide, but for like Plainfield, for instance, they submitted over 20 buyouts. That's, a quarter of their village, essentially. So it's proportionally a big hit to some smaller communities.
gotcha. So structuring this, okay. So this is a focused conversation. I want to step back for a second. This is a conversation for us to take a peek at for the budget, right? So the budget impact for 2026 would be the $1 million or beyond.
It would be, if all the stars aligned, $1 million property, a million could theoretically emerge. So that's why we put the million there, but it is likely to be lower than that.
Million or
So,
below, gotcha.
Million or less, yeah.
Okay. So I guess basically then, like, with that, I would say if you could just email us what the language proposal looks like that you were discussing in one of the other rooms, we can digest that.
Absolutely.
Yes, just, yeah, there was no need to give us a breakdown. I think I understand where you're coming from and we can entertain questions right now before we do have the floor in a couple of minutes, but this is very similar to some conversations that other abatement tax stuff that we did last year in committee. So those members here, this is not an unfamiliar conversation.
Great.
Representative Luigi.
I'm trying to understand or see if I understand, if the taxes were paid by the state or the municipality on behalf of the property that is no longer able to pay. How were you saying that that property owner would still owe the same taxes to the municipality?
So property can go a couple of different directions. The most common path for a property in this circumstance is that it's going to be a residential property or commercial property, so it's in private ownership. And then the way FEMA operates, the terms of that are that the municipality has to own the property at the end of it, and they have to agree to permanently conserve it. So it won't go into state ownership. It'll go into municipal ownership, and therefore it wouldn't not be part of the normal payment in lieu of taxes construct. So when the Agency of Natural Resources buys a piece of land from someone to conserve it, there's a process to pay that municipality based on the last amount of municipal taxes that were collected. And that is an in perpetuity type arrangement because the state has conserved that land, taken it off the municipal tax rolls, and they're reimbursing the municipality to support their operations going forward. For the vast majority of these buyouts, they go into municipal ownership, so the state won't be involved. If the state agrees to conserve part of our land or our parcel, then that land would still be incorporated in the payment in lieu of taxes, the normal state construct. So there wouldn't be any changes needed for that situation.
All right, we got the red light on in this check. This is last call. Who? For our Chief Recovery Officer. No? All right, thank you very much, sir. It's just whatever with the language.
Yes.
Fired over, beautiful. We will follow up with questions as we go to dot I's and cross T's on our.
Absolutely.